My name is Margaret Hayes, and I'm 62 years old. I've lived in the same house on Maple Street for 37 years. The wallpaper in the kitchen still has the pattern my late mother helped me choose. The garden out back holds roses I planted when my daughter Sarah was born. Everything in my life had its place, its memory, its story, until the day Dr. Rachel Chen slipped that note into my purse. I had gone to see her about the headaches. They'd been getting worse over the past few months, pressing against my temples like someone was tightening a vice. My husband, Thomas, said I worried too much. "You're always imagining things, Maggie," he'd say, barely looking up from his newspaper. Dr. Chen had been my physician for 15 years. She knew my history, knew about the mild diabetes, the arthritis in my hands, the way I sometimes forgot to take my blood pressure medication. She was a kind woman, in her early 50s, with gentle eyes that actually looked at you when she spoke. That Tuesday afternoon, the examination room felt colder than usual. Dr. Chen performed the usual tests, checking my blood pressure, listening to my heart, asking about my diet and stress levels. But something was different. Her hands trembled slightly as she made notes on her tablet. She kept glancing at the door. "Mrs. Hayes," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to trust me completely right now." I nodded, confused by the sudden shift in her demeanor. She stood up and walked to the door, checking the hallway outside. Then she returned to her desk, pulled out a prescription pad, and wrote something. But instead of handing it to me directly, she folded the paper and discreetly tucked it into my purse, which sat on the chair beside me. "Your headaches," she said louder, as if performing for an invisible audience. "I'm prescribing some medication. Make sure you follow the dosage carefully. Come back in 2 weeks for a follow-up." Her eyes locked with mine, and in them, I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. I wanted to ask questions, but something in her expression stopped me. I simply nodded, took my purse, and left. In my car, sitting in the clinic parking lot with trembling hands, I found the note. The words were written in urgent, messy handwriting, so different from her usual neat script. "Don't go home. Run. Your life depends on it. Go to the Riverside Motel on Highway 9, room 217. I'll explain everything tonight at 8 p.m. Tell no one." Destroy this note. My heart hammered in my chest. This had to be some kind of mistake. Perhaps she'd meant to give this to another patient. But she'd looked directly at me. She'd placed it in my purse deliberately. I sat there for 20 minutes, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. People came and went, living their normal lives, while mine seemed to be crumbling into something I couldn't understand. Finally, I started the car, but I didn't drive home. The Riverside Motel was the kind of place that had seen better decades. It sat at the edge of town, where the highway curved toward the state line. I'd driven past it 1,000 times but never once considered stopping. Now, as I pulled into the parking lot, I felt like I'd entered a different world entirely. Room 217 was on the second floor, at the far end. I paid cash for one night, using money from the emergency envelope I kept in my glove compartment. The clerk, a young man with tired eyes, barely looked at me. The room smelled of old carpet and industrial cleaner. I sat on the edge of the bed, my purse clutched in my lap, and waited. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed red. 3:47 p.m. I had over 4 hours until Dr. Chen would arrive. My phone rang 3 times. "Thomas." I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the answer button. But Dr. Chen had said to tell no one. Against every instinct, I let it go to voicemail. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. I watched the light outside shift from afternoon gold to evening gray. I thought about my life, about Thomas, about the 39 years we'd been married. We'd met at a county fair when I was 23. He'd won me a stuffed bear at the ring toss. He'd been handsome then, with thick dark hair and a confident smile that made me feel special. The years had been good, mostly. We'd raised Sarah together, weathered my father's death, Thomas's job changes, the usual storms of a long marriage. Yes, he'd grown distant in recent years. Yes, he spent more time at his office than he used to. Yes, we'd stopped really talking, stopped really seeing each other. But I'd assumed that was simply what happened to marriages after nearly 4 decades. At 7:58 p.m., There was a soft knock at the door. Dr. Chen stood in the hallway, wearing jeans and a jacket, looking nothing like the professional woman I'd seen hours earlier. She glanced quickly left and right before stepping inside. "Thank you for trusting me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know how crazy this must seem." "What's happening?" I asked. "Why did you tell me not to go home?" She sat in the chair by the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "2 weeks ago, my younger sister Linda came to see me. She's a nurse at County General, works in the emergency room. She was upset, crying, saying she'd done something terrible and didn't know what to do." I waited, my heart beating faster. "Linda has been having an affair," Dr. Chen continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "with the married man." She told me his name. She paused, her eyes meeting mine. "Thomas Hayes." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the bed. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't know if I should tell you." I spent days agonizing over it, but then Linda told me something else. She overheard Thomas on the phone with someone. She said he was talking about life insurance, about how much he'd receive when you were gone. She said the way he spoke frightened her. My mouth had gone completely dry. "What are you saying?" Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Linda believes Thomas might be planning to harm you. She heard him discuss it with someone, though she doesn't know who. She said he mentioned making it look like an accident or natural causes. Something about your medications, the headaches, the increasing headaches that had brought me to Dr. Chen's office. I ran tests on your blood work," she continued. "Margaret, someone has been giving you gradually increasing doses of a medication that shouldn't be in your system. It's subtle enough that if you died, it would likely be ruled as a complication from your diabetes or blood pressure. But I know what to look for, and I found it." I couldn't breathe. The man I'd spent nearly 40 years with, the man who'd held my hand when Sarah was born, the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. Linda felt terrible, Dr. Chen said. She broke off the affair immediately, but she was afraid to go to the police without proof, and afraid Thomas might hurt her too if he found out she knew. So she came to me. And I knew I had to warn you, but I couldn't risk doing it at my office where anyone might overhear or see. "How long?" I managed to ask. "How long has he been a broken bar?" According to Linda, the affair started about 8 months ago, but the phone conversation she overheard was just 3 weeks ago. 8 months. I thought back, remembering the flowers Thomas had brought home unexpectedly in March, the way he'd started dressing better, wearing cologne again, the late nights at the office, all the signs I dismissed as him just having a renewed interest in life. "What do I do?" I asked, tears finally breaking free. Dr. Chen reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "I've documented everything I found in your blood work." Linda has written a statement about what she heard, though she's terrified to be involved. I also took the liberty of contacting a friend of mine, Detective Patricia Morrison. She's willing to listen to everything off the record first, to build a case before approaching Thomas. She handed me the envelope. "There's also cash in there, about $3,000. It's what I could spare. You'll need it to stay somewhere safe while we figure this out. And there's the name and number of a lawyer who specializes in these cases." I stared at the envelope like it contained evidence of an alien existence. In a way, it did. Evidence that the life I thought I'd been living was a complete fabrication. "Why are you helping me?" I whispered. "You barely know me." Her eyes filled with tears. "Because 20 years ago, someone tried to hurt my mother. No one warned her in time. She survived, but barely. I swore then that if I ever saw signs of something similar, I wouldn't stay silent." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "And because you deserve better than this, Margaret, you deserve so much better." We sat there for a long moment, two women bound by an act of desperate kindness. Over the next 3 days, I stayed at the motel while Detective Morrison quietly investigated. She was a sharp woman in her mid-40s, with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. She brought in a forensics team to analyze the medications in my home. She interviewed Linda, who was terrified but brave enough to tell the truth. She pulled Thomas's phone records, his financial documents, his life insurance policies. The picture that emerged was devastating. Thomas had taken out a policy on my life 2 years ago, worth $500,000. His business was failing, drowning in debt I knew nothing about, and he'd fallen in love with Linda, 20 years younger than me, and wanted a new life without the burden of an aging wife. The medication he'd been secretly adding to my daily vitamins was meant to mimic the effects of a stroke or heart attack, slow enough that no one would suspect, cruel enough that I would have suffered before the end. On this fourth day, Detective Morrison arrested Thomas at his office. I wasn't there, but she told me later that he'd collapsed, actually wept, claiming it wasn't what it looked like. But the evidence was overwhelming. The trial took 8 months. I testified, my voice steady even though inside I was shattered. Linda testified too, her face pale with shame and fear. Dr. Chen provided the medical evidence. In the end, Thomas was convicted of attempted murder. The judge sentenced him to 25 years. Sarah flew in from Seattle where she'd been living with her own family. She held me while I cried, stroked my hair like I'd done for her so many times when she was small. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she kept saying. I should have noticed something was wrong. But how could she have? We all wear masks, sometimes without even realizing it. I sold the house on Maple Street. I couldn't live there anymore, surrounded by memories that had been poisoned. Instead, I bought a small cottage near the lake, with the front porch where I could watch the sunrise. Dr. Chen and I became real friends. She'd check on me every week, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just sitting with me in comfortable silence. Linda sent a letter of apology, which I read but didn't respond to. Forgiveness would take more time than I had yet learned to give. What I learned from those terrible days is that kindness can come from unexpected places, that betrayal can wear the most familiar face, that love, real love, protects rather than destroys, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is listen to that small voice inside that tells us something is wrong. I'm 63 now, a year older and infinitely wiser. I tend my small garden, where I've planted new roses. I write letters to Sarah's children. I volunteer at the women's shelter downtown, helping others who've escaped dangerous situations. And every year, on the anniversary of that October day, I send Dr. Rachel Chen a thank you card. Not for saving my life, though she did, but for showing me that even in our darkest moments, there are people who will risk everything to do what's right. Sometimes I think about Thomas, growing old in a prison cell. I wonder if he feels remorse or just regret at being caught. But mostly, I don't think about him at all, because I've learned that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I've chosen to spend the rest of my days surrounded by people who genuinely care, in a home that feels safe, living a life that's finally, truly mine. The note Dr. Chen slipped into my purse that day didn't just save my life, it gave me permission to start a new one.